Hi there, Molly Wallen here, and I will be discussing with you my flight scenario number 2. So for this flight scenario, we are taking two friends from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Dallas, Texas for a Vikings versus Cowboys football game. In this scenario, one of my friends is very excited about the flight, very interested in learning about the airplane itself, while the other is very apprehensive and a nervous flyer. I will be flying in a twin engine lightweight aircraft, and one of the key factors for this flight is to be assessing how to fly safely with single pilot resource management while monitoring my two passengers. So before the flight even begins, I think a very important idea would be to take both passengers to the aircraft itself. They can go ahead and get a seat inside the aircraft, ask any questions that they might have, get any nerves, excitement out of the way beforehand, and kind of just get a feel for the aircraft. In an ideal situation, because this is such a long flight from the Midwest, all the way down south to Texas, would ideally like to take them up on a flight beforehand and just do a couple laps in the pattern, or even go out to the practice area and back in. Right now I am a flight attendant, so I am very familiar with nervous passengers, and so that can be a couple different situations, from claustrophobic to a fear of heights to just an irrational fear that the plane's going to fall out of the sky when the turbulence hits. So being able to go and just do a small, quick little flight can kind of get some of those nerves out of the way, so that we know how to assess the situation for the longer flight up, ahead of time. So next, I think a good idea, after they've done the walk around, they've gotten to see the plane, gotten to feel any questions that they may have. I like to go to the back of my flight school, sit down and get a proper weather briefing. They can witness me gathering that, see my confidence. Maybe that'll help make them feel a little more secure in that. I can show them weather reports so that they can see how the winds aloft may be. I can give them an idea of how turbulence is, get an idea of any alternate weather reports. And then kind of from there, I want to explain the key phases of flight. I want to explain to them that when tower is talking, that they should just be completely silent. Explain to them what sterile cockpit is during those key phases of flight, and how I'll be listening and trying to gather that important information. Then I think it'd be a really good idea for my excited passenger to be able to sit up front. An idea would be for them to help me out with checklists during cruise flights, and even if they want to go through the climb checklist and descent checklists with me, kind of point that out to them. I can also show them the emergency procedures, which is typically on the back side of the checklist, listed in red, and kind of explain some of that information to them. I personally like to use ForeFlight, so then I would like to go ahead and show them taxi diagrams, kind of explain with my home airport. I'm very familiar with the typical routes to either the runways that we're using, and kind of explain how we'll be going through there and how they shouldn't be talking during all that, so I can listen in case they call for my tail number. Then I'll explain our route of flight. If there's any airspace we'll be going through, I can kind of just give them a fun little run through of that. If there's any important obstacles that we might spot, any fun landscape features or anything like that, I can explain to them, and that can be kind of something fun for them to be able to look through as we are flying over to Texas. All right. Now, systems. My friends personally don't know anything about airplanes, so I don't want to get them too bogged down or too overwhelmed. So I just want to explain the very basic questions that they might have for not knowing anything about airplanes. So basic landing gear system, I would just let them know that the landing gear is electrically actuated, and that it's it's electrically activated, hydraulically actuated. So operated off of a 12-volt battery, and then the hydraulic fluid flows in and out, which raises and lowers that landing gear. So just very, very basic on landing gear system. And then it's getting colder, they might ask me about snow or ice, or they know going to a higher altitude means it's colder. So just explaining to them that although our aircraft does have an anti-icing de-icing system, that we are not personally allowed to be flying into icing conditions. However, our pitot-static system is de-icing or anti-icing equipment based on where we are, and then that heats up to allow us to be able to gather our airspeed, our vertical speed, and our altitude. And then very, very basics other than that, they might be complaining, getting too hot, too cold. So just very basic induction air. It's through the air filter. And then just as when I was flying in the little Cessna, the carb heat is the unfiltered air, which is heated by the exhaust through the shroud. And then emergency procedures. So prior to even taking off, I always give my passengers a briefing, and that will be going over any pre-planned emergency situations that we could come across before we even take off. A very common emergency procedure or situation is engine roughness. I've actually experienced it. It can be something as simple as carb ice flying into icing conditions, just turning on carb heat, or even just having your mixture tooling, and then you just need to enrich in your mixture. And then that can be something as simple as that to deal with that. But emergency checklist, like I'd explained to my passengers earlier, if they flip the card over, engine roughness is one of the signs. So my passengers can look over that while I'm kind of dealing with those flows in my head. And then engine fire, there's 3 different phases essentially where the engine fire can occur: during start, during takeoff, and during flight. They kind of all have their own breakdown of how to handle that, which I won't go ahead and read all for you, but it's listed right down below. And then finally, I will be having passengers up with me, although I am doing a single pilot resource management flight. So once again, I just want to kind of go over the 5 Ps. When dealing with this situation, we know that's pilot, plan, plane, passengers, and programming. Me as the pilot, before any flight, I always go over my I'm safe acronym, making sure I'm not ill, not on any medication, alcohol I haven't drank in the last, my personal minimum is 12 hours. I'm not stressed, I'm not fatigued, I've eaten, just making sure that I'm good to go, and then that any weather is not below my personal minimums. Plan, like I've mentioned earlier, I'm going to sit down with my passengers, explain the route of flight. We've gathered weather, we've looked up NOTAMs, we've gathered runway information, anything past our vicinity, we've gotten the proper pre-flight information. In terms of the airplane, we've made sure that we're fueled, we've done the proper walk around with our checklist, which I've taken my passengers to do, checked the oil. Throughout the flight, we're going to be continually monitoring our systems. Before we've even taken off, this is more towards programming, but I will put in all the flight information pertaining to the flight so that I'm not distracted during any key phases of the flight. Passengers, like I said, I've given them checklists. I'll also let them know to let me know based on the radial clock dial system if they have seen any traffic in the area. Other than that, they know key times when to not talk and so forth. Plan, plane, passengers, programming, and me, the pilot. So that's kind of the basic rundown, and here is my resources. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon.